Metal Jesus here, and I am back again with Kelsey. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How about you?
I'm not doing so hot. I accidentally bought a reproduction fake game.
Oh no. Well, it happens to a lot of people, even collectors, seasoned collectors. You will find these on eBay, Etsy, even in your local game store, GameStop, conventions. Sometimes they don't even know it. There are a lot of red flags that you might know already, but there's a lot of smaller ones too that may not give it away so easily.
I know. I'm really looking forward to this video because, like I said, I've fallen victim to it. So I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, and today we're going to be talking about NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and DS. Those are the most commonly duped things, but there's all kinds of other ones too. It would just be like a 3-hour video, so.
This is going to be awesome, so I'm looking forward to it. Let's take a look. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you being the co-owner of 2 retro gaming stores here in Seattle, Pink Gorilla Games, you probably have to deal with this more than most people.
We definitely do. There's a lot of people who come in and try to trade in games that are bootleg, fake, reproduction, anything like that. They're not always necessarily trying to scam us. It could just be that they have no idea what they have, and I see that pretty commonly, actually. So this is really good for you to know all of these things, because, I mean, they could have gotten past our line of defense and ended up in the store. So you need to come prepared with 2 things. This is a tri-wing screwdriver. This is used for Game Boy Advance primarily, but also for some of the Nintendo consoles. And this is called a 3.8mm game bit. This is used for basically everything else: NES, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color. These are both like Nintendo tools. They use these for all of their consoles and stuff like that, and they're like $5 a piece on eBay or so. You need to bring these with you wherever you go, where you think you're going to be buying games. Game stores, conventions, anything like that. Even if you're meeting somebody off of Craigslist, you should have them with you when you get your package from eBay, and immediately look at it and make sure it is real. If anyone tries to tell you you can't open it because it's gonna like decrease the value or something stupid like that, don't buy it.
Big red flag.
Yeah, huge red flag.
Even in a retro store like yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I always let people open the games. Well, I usually do it myself for them, but
sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
So these are tools that you need to have, and that'll be able to tell you the real meat of this, which is the circuit boards, which is the easiest tells. But you do have a first line of defense, and that's the labels and the plastic. You're typically going to have a cheaper plastic on a reproduction or a bootleg. It's pretty hard to tell on the video, but when you feel them in your hands, if you have a legitimate one with you and you compare it to the other one, they usually feel just more brittle and cheap. It's kind of hard to describe. They'll also sometimes be missing things like where there's usually Nintendo engraved in it, it'll have nothing, or it says Game Boy, it'll say game or something like that.
Sure.
So there are some tells with that. You also want to make sure the label is glossy. It should be very, very clear that, I mean, all of the fonts and images and everything should be very crisp. Shouldn't be any blurriness. It should have the Nintendo seal of quality on it. In the US, it's an oval, and in European regions, it's a circle. I have had some people think that they have a bootleg, and they really just have a European release because they see, oh, hey, that's different.
Never seen this before. Yeah.
So you should know that as well. Fonts are a really, really big deal. It seems like nobody knows how to reproduce the correct fonts.
It seems like that'd be the easiest thing, right?
I know, yes. Nobody knows how to do that, so you'll typically see something slightly wrong with the fonts when you're looking at reproduction cartridges, too. So we're going to start with NES games, which are very commonly faked. Especially for really expensive titles like Little Samson and Dinosaur Peak and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of people who try to pass these off. Now, sometimes in the case of this, they actually are nice about it and say reproduction at the bottom here. But the label otherwise is actually pretty close.
I mean, I was mentioning to you, it looks almost nicer than the original.
Yeah, this one's still glossy. It's got the correct fonts, the correct artwork on it. I mean, there's no like super obvious other than where it says reproduction, which the people who are trying to scam you will not have reproduction on it. This one's pretty close, so I can understand if you take this one and you want to actually take it apart. And actually in this one, the screws on this have Phillips screwdrivers on them, so that's not correct. So here's what a legit metal storm looks like, and here's what our reproduction looks like. Now not all of them look this obvious. This is a
Right.
pretty, like, oh, okay, those are nothing alike. So sometimes you will have the same shape, and it'll be the same color board, but there's still a lot of ways to tell. If you see these chips right here, these are the ROMs. So this right here, with this kind of bigger window with tape over it, this is called an EEPROM, erasable programmable read-only memory. Oh my gosh, I can't say that. So these are ones that you can just kind of flash any game onto, and this is what's really common in these NES games and Super Nintendo games because they're so easy and cheap to do. If you've watched John Riggs' videos, he uses these. Of course, he's not trying to scam anybody, but but you'll see these a lot. You'll also see sometimes like wires on the board. There's no wires on Nintendo games. And then a little bit later in this video, I'm going to mention that there are never any glob top black solder globs on any Nintendo boards that are on really any boards. That's kind of a lie. This is Mario Duck Hunt. This one does have it, but it's only the black box Nintendo games that could have these, and they're usually pretty even right here.
Yeah,
nice
those are very
squares.
nice looking.
You'll also be able to sort of tell a difference here in the quality of the pins. It's a little bit hard to catch on video, but Nintendo used copper because it's really conductive. And usually the reproductions use tin. It's cheaper. So you can tell kind of a difference. One is a lot more shiny and coppery looking, and this one is almost silvery.
I
You can
tell
kind
the
of
difference.
see that difference there. The other thing is a lot of these reproductions have what almost looks like they've been laser cut. Like they're very kind of sharp on the edges here. And while circuit boards are pretty sharp in general, they'll be extra. Feel the difference between that? Yeah.
Right.
So they feel like they've been laser cut. So there's quite a few tells here. Obviously this one, they're not trying to fool anybody. I mean, this says Retro Stage 2015. I mean, these are...
Yeah.
This one is not trying to fool anybody. But, I mean, if you tore the label a little bit here and you wanted to
Honestly,
fool somebody...
myself, that font is so small there, I don't know if I would actually, pick that up. I mean, I assume that whoever made this is trying to not trick people, by putting that on there initially, but you never know. It's easy to make the mistake.
Right. And the other thing you might see, if you don't see one of these EEPROMs here with the windows on them, this one has tape over it to kind of like... So you can't see it as well and to protect it, but sometimes they won't have the tape over it and it'll just be this big open circle. They'll also like stack another chip on top of it so it looks legit, except it has like 2 levels to the board. There's never any 2 levels to a board. That's definitely a reproduction.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's most of the tells right there. Your literal best defense is just Googling Metal Storm circuit board and you'll be able to see what it should actually look like. I will warn you that there are occasionally things like on some of these chips, one might be manufactured in Korea and one might be manufactured in Japan. That's still okay. Sometimes they did get chips from different sources and different companies, so as long as it looks the same other than that, that's totally fine. They also have Nintendo, like in this gold font here on the board of all of these, as well as like not a serial number, what do you call it, like a product number on all of these. And you can always Google that too and make sure that that's correct. Of course, you could fake that as well, but that's another.
But they often don't, huh?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to remember when you're making a reproduction, and a lot of times people miss 1 or 2, and that's all it takes.
Well, and how many people open them up? I mean, usually you've bought it by then, right?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I'll tell you right now, even I have just assumed that, and years ago, but I just assumed that a store checks to make sure it's not fake, and so I didn't bring my tools with me, and I've been duped before, so it does happen.
It does happen.
All right, well, let's take a look at the Super Nintendo. This is the real Earthbound. It's pretty big. This is fake Earthbound. There's quite a few differences here, namely the size.
Yeah.
So the other thing is a lot of these RPGs have these batteries on the board, and they're soldered onto the board, and you can kind of see on the back where they're actually like attached. This one was like a separate piece. This is like a piece you can get at Radio Shack to install a battery on something, and that's a pretty different process that, to my knowledge, has never been done on a cartridge. They're always just soldered onto the board with these little wings that are on them here. So that's pretty easy, I would say.
Once you have it open, it is pretty easy.
Right, yeah, once you've opened these, and that's why it's so important to have these tools.
Yep. I need to get some of those.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to Game Boy.
Yes, let's do it.
right, so now we're moving on to the handhelds. Of all the handhelds, the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy are probably the least likely to be duped, but that still happens a lot. So I think right off the bat, you should tell me all of the differences you notice between these two copies right here.
Well, yeah, this one looks like a game I might actually want to buy. This one just looks distorted and weird.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things, obviously. No one's gonna really be fooled by this. The color's wrong.
Right.
I mean, the label is wrong. Maybe that's not quite as obvious to everybody.
It's missing also the text up here.
Yeah, exactly. So there's always like engravings of some sort on Nintendo games. You should recognize what those are. On the Game Boy ones, they say Nintendo Game Boy up on the top here, and it's engraved and nice, and it's got the little TM trademark symbol at the bottom there. So once again, the biggest tell is going to be on the inside, and for Game Boy games, it seems to be really freaking obvious. So, like I said earlier, Nintendo does not use those glob top, big black solder globs on any of their stuff, except for the like 2 NES games I mentioned. But they basically don't use that. So anytime you see that, it's fake. That's it. You can call it a fake and you can walk away. You don't have to do any more digging. And that's usually pretty obvious, and they don't try to hide it. So these ones can be pretty easy, honestly. Once again, you've got that...
the battery.
Oh yeah, the battery on this, you can tell, it's different.
Yeah, much different.
This is supposed to be the same game. Pokemon Yellow actually uses a CR1616 battery. It's a slightly smaller size than what they're using here, and it actually says that on the board. Most of the Pokemon games in the Game Boy Color generation, at least red and blue, use a larger battery. It's a 2025, if I remember correctly. So this one, it'll say the battery size on there, and then this one, of course, it's in some like weird cage looking thing. I don't know what they did with that, but like I said, it's always soldered onto the board. That's true with Super Nintendo and all of that as well. They don't ever have a weird like holder for it like in this. Okay, so I have a little test for you. I want you to tell me which one of these Pokemon Emerald games is legit.
All right, you want me to look like a fool here. So so to be fair, I never owned this. I had Fire Red.
Okay.
So I'm not really super familiar with this, but out of all of these, it seems like this is the obvious one that would not be correct, right?
Yeah. And this one actually came through the store. It was a little kid who was wondering why his Pokemon Emerald wouldn't work, and I felt really bad for him, telling him that it was a fake.
Okay.
So you've narrowed it down.
Oh man. Okay. This one just looks too dull. There's something about the label that does not look legit. Also, the color of that just looks off. It looks wrong to me. These two here, these are tough. Well, this one's shaking. But that just means it was, on the playground, right? Huh. I think this one at least looks like the nicest one. That would be my answer.
And you would be correct in that this looks like the nicest one. But it's still a fake. I tricked you. I'm sorry.
They're all fake.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But this is certainly the closest. At least they got the fonts right on this and the color of the cartridge, but it just doesn't have that metallic sheen that's on all the Pokemon
you're right.
games. All the Pokemon games are like metallic rather than just glossy.
You're right. Okay.
So these all you can tell as soon as you open them. They've got that black blob. And I want to say something about Game Boy Advance games. This is usually my tell with how to immediately say, okay, this is probably real. If you look at a Nintendo Game Boy Advance board or Game Boy really, it has this Nintendo here in this font and usually has a copyright, and then there's the product number right there, and you can actually see that without opening it if you just kind of look at it like this. Now what's interesting is your Doom cartridge actually had that, and it's the correct font and everything. I mean, this is really, if you didn't open this and you still saw this printed on the board, it looks pretty legit. Yeah,
because when I first showed it to you, you're like, are you sure that's fake? Remember?
Yeah. And some of your subscribers pointed this out. I mean, it has a typo on the label. It says 19,093 or something like that.
Which, again, I didn't notice when I first saw this.
Yeah, these are little things, and it's a little bit blurrier than normal, but they got all the fonts right. They got the stamping right. On the back, the font of the Nintendo that's stamped in is a little incorrect, but I mean, that's a smaller, nuanced thing. So I think if you were going to get duped by a game, at least you did okay.
Yeah, and what's funny about this is that, so, I thought I did my homework. Like, I bought it from a eBay seller that had thousands of good reviews.
And not coming from China.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing, too, is that when I got this home, I played it for a week before I even knew it. I mean, the game is on here. It plays like normal. I was like, I would have never have known. It was shocking to me. But I did pay full price for this. This is not a cheap game.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
And if you had found it for $10, you probably would have been a lot more suspicious of it, I think.
But it was way more than $10.
Yeah. All right, so finally we're going to be talking about DS games, which are getting more and more faked every day. I see tons of these listings on eBay, so you definitely have to watch out for these because they're getting a lot better at it. So I have another test for you, but this time I promise one of these is real because one of these is yours.
Okay. You're like, if you don't know that...
I wonder if you can pick out your own. This is Mario Kart on the DS. One of these should jump out at you pretty quickly, I would think.
So here's the thing about this. I don't always sit there and look at the DS cartridge, right?
Right, so you may not know what the...
No, I mean, honestly, I would be tempted to pick this one, but I know it's not because the label's on crooked.
Right.
Right? But, I mean, I don't remember if there's Mario on it or not. That's pretty funny, right?
Yeah. So once again, this is the box art rather than the cartridge art that they just kind of compressed. And actually, this one's funny because it's got the English seal of quality on it, and the ESRB, American Nintendo seal of quality, and the ESRB, which of course is American, but then it says EUR on the bottom.
Oh.
European. Yeah.
That's funny.
They didn't even think that one through.
All right, so for these ones that are left, oh my god.
Your hint is check the back too.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's tough. Let me know if you give up.
Okay, well, geez. I'm gonna give up.
Okay, so what's funny about this is actually one of these fake ones is mine. It was something I must have just bought from an expo or something, and I didn't think to really check carefully because it's a cheap game. Who cares?
Yeah.
So I never thought about it. So one of these incorrect ones is mine, and it's very, very close. This one is mine. You can see the Nintendo logos on these have just a slightly different font. Here's the real one. You see the font difference in these? I know it's so intricate and so hard to tell. So that's why these ones are getting a lot harder.
And there's nothing to open up.
You can pry these open, but you'll have to glue them back together. Yeah. They don't have a nice little screw like the other ones did. So you just want to look at all of the engravings on these. With the real one, you'll see the slight difference in font where it says NTR005 and patent pending. Again, these are small things, so it's important to have a reference of some sort, and that's why eBay listings are so dangerous because the lighting could just be bad.
Absolutely, or the camera is funky.
Right.
Yeah.
I also have Pokemon Platinum here, and your biggest giveaway here is just the label is darker on this one. Again, I will caution you, if you are buying a game or a lot of 3 games especially, I see Pokemon Platinum, Mario Kart, Pokemon Soul Silver, Pokemon Heart Gold, White, Black, all of these, like especially Pokemon and Mario games, super, super commonly faked ones. If you're buying something and it's too good to be true, it is fake, even if it looks really legitimate from the listing.
Well, this has been an eye-opener for me. I actually thought it'd be way easier to tell, and this is really cool.
Not when you get to DS, unfortunately.
I know.
Sometimes you'll see pretty obvious ones, like on the back of some of these, it'll say like Nintendo instead of Nintendo.
Yeah, you have an example of that. Yeah. That's so funny.
And and actually one made it through one of my employees that says Nintendo on the back, and I was like, really? But it's fine. So there's a lot of different ways you can tell, but some of them are pretty difficult. So of course, bringing these will help you with everything except DS, and then for DS, have a reference with you. That's my biggest piece of advice. Just pick up a dollar game at GameStop, Style Savvy or something like that, Guitar Hero, and bring that around with you and make sure the fonts match, because that's really going to be your biggest defense on that one.
That makes sense. So this is obviously very Nintendo specific.
Yes.
And so we didn't really even touch on like Sega or any of that stuff.
And that stuff gets faked too, especially like Saturn and Dreamcast and TurboGrafx and stuff. I mean, those things definitely do get faked, but by and large, I would say Nintendo's and especially Nintendo handheld consoles are the most faked and bootlegged reproduction, that kind of stuff.
Well, let us know down in the comments what you thought about this video, and if you would like us to do another one of these where we do focus on some of the other systems, because we could certainly do that. I think that'd be pretty interesting.
I might need someone to send me some fake games, because I don't have a whole lot of them for those other systems.
They don't come into your store very often.
Not as often, because they're, for the CD ones, I mean, it's like, it's pretty obvious when it's a reproduction label, so I haven't really seen very many convincing fakes.
Huh, interesting. Well, cool. Well, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at @KelsLewin, or you can follow my podcast at GameBlitz Show. We're also on iTunes and YouTube and Google Play and all that fun stuff.
That's right. And also, I'm going to do a shout out to your store, pinkgorillagames.com.
Thanks.
So if you come to Seattle, definitely go to their store. Bring your tools. You can open up.
We'll let you.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks very much for watching this video. Thanks for subscribing to my channel, and take care. Kelsey and I have done a bunch of videos together, including some pretty cool ones, like the Wonder Swan guide. That's right. If you don't know about the Wonder Swan, you're going to want to check out that video. We've also done a Nintendo DS guide, where she bought 50 Nintendo DSs for that video. I think she might be kind of crazy. I'm just saying. So you're definitely going to want to check out my channel and be subscribed. New videos every single week.